want to commend Kansanshi Mining PLC for the big heart that they have towards seeing that the business community, the small and micro enterprise category, are transformed to becoming meaningful businesses in the future. Let me also thank the radio station Beat FM for giving us airtime just to enable us to communicate and get to our listeners. And I believe that through the airwaves, we are able to reach out to as many people as possible. And we have a greater number of beneficiaries from this training program. We are also live on our Facebook page, Fortune World Investments Ltd. That is our Facebook page. So please go to our page, like it, share it with other groups, and let the number of beneficiaries increase so that we can continue to distribute this knowledge for enterprise development. Our target group for this training program are the micro entrepreneurs, those who are very small, those who are, you may be in a business and you are not yet formalized. This is actually the training program for you. Or perhaps you are thinking of starting a business in the near future. Maybe you are working and you are thinking of retirement. Maybe you are working, you are still young, and you want to have a business on the side so that you can begin to prepare in advance, for your retirement. This is the right program for you. Or you may be a small business. You are formal. You registered your business with PACRA, or you're a cooperative, or whatever legal status that you may have, and you feel that you want to increase your knowledge in enterprise development. This is the right business development training program for you. We have about 20 to 24 modules that we share over a period of 24 months. And when you commit just 2 hours of your time every month, you will be able to get significant knowledge. And on special request for those that would like to receive handouts, we can email them to you. You can give us your details, or we can WhatsApp them to you so that you can always revise. So our Facebook followers, you will be privileged to see our presentations via, we have PowerPoint presentations that you can follow, that you can revise. And we also have a YouTube channel, Fortune World Investments. You can get to our YouTube channel and you see all the videos of the past presentations, which you can use to revise when you are free. Take your time, listen to them, look at the slides, and that will give you a very good refreshment with regards to what you learned in the past, in the recent past. So thank you so much. As per our usual custom, because we are living in difficult times where we have COVID-19, we're going to have a short coffee talk, and then we will listen to the next segment, which is our training objectives. So I'll ask my counterpart to greet you and to straight away go into coffee talk.
Thank you so much. Welcome, listeners. My name's Elliot Mtesi. I'll share with you the COVID talk. Let us be reminded that COVID-19 is still with us, and it's also have started showing signs of going into our fourth wave, the fourth wave that we were fearing. So far, the Omicron virus, the variant, is already in the country. I'm sure you are aware that over the last weekend, there were some cases that were detected who had this variant. Now, our fear is that this may worsen, and the only way to prevent this becoming worse is for us to follow the guidelines that we have been given by WHO, Ministry of Health. These guidelines are the only sure ways of preventing infection. So we'll share these guidelines. The first one, we are saying, let us continue masking up. Every time that we leave our comfort zones, we make sure that we put on our masks correctly. Correctly means you put them on, covering your nose and your mouth. And even when you feel like coughing, please do not remove your mask. Cough in that mask. The second one is social or physical distancing. Make sure that you are at least 1.5 meters, 1 meter or 3 meters away from the next person. Avoid hugs, avoid handshakes. This also will prevent the transmission of this virus. Regularly make sure that you wash your hands with soap and clean water. Where possible, if you have hand sanitizer, use that hand sanitizer regularly. I've already talked about practicing the cough etiquette. Do not cough anyhow. Make sure that as you cough, cough in a cloth, in your mask, and in a bent elbow. That will avoid the spread of those droplets that come from your mouth. Stay home. Stay home if you are not feeling well. Or avoid unnecessary movements, if anything. Avoid crowded places. Crowded places are many. You are talking of places like markets, church gatherings, and so many, the malls and whatever. Yes, make sure that you spend as little time as possible when you go to these very important crowded places like markets and malls. Go there. Make sure as you go there, you will have your mask on and you exercise the social distancing. Then buy whatever you want to buy and quickly leave the place. The sixth point is the vaccine. Please get your jabs. Get the vaccine. This vaccine is free. No one will ask you to contribute anything. The vaccine is effective and it's all over. This vaccine is all over. You go to any health facility, you will find somebody who will attend to you. Please, let's not listen to these rumor mongers who are telling us that this vaccine is bad, it's what? No, that is not true. Funny thing is, I checked on social media. I saw people posting, you know, these phones sticking to their arms, to their injection sites. I was surprised because me, I'm one of those who has gotten the jabs with so many that I know, and our phones are not sticking to our arms. So it shows that all those are lies. Please do not fall to such. Do not listen to such lies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that COVID talk. So now we are going to move on into the next segment, which is our training objectives, and I'll quickly go through them. As per our usual, we always remind ourselves as to what it is that we come to do when we are attending the business development training program. Okay, so the first objective, as per usual, is the acquirement of knowledge for enterprise development, acquirement of uh, entrepreneurship training knowledge. This knowledge is very important. Why is it important? It is important because that is the knowledge that is going to empower you for enterprise development. Enterprise development. The knowledge that we acquire through this training program, once we apply it properly, will empower us to grow our businesses. We have 24 modules, and each and every module is actually designed in such a way that it is independent from the other, but it is able to give you one direction in which you can grow your business. So the topic for today, which I'll be introducing very soon, is another topic that you can apply to your business and ensure that you are safe in the way you're running your business. So knowledge that you apply is what we call power. You can have knowledge without applying it. It will not empower your business. But when we have this knowledge, let us apply it, and we are going to be empowered, for impact in our businesses. The second objective is employment creation. Employment is the responsibility of not only the government, not only the big companies like our sponsor Kansanshi, but even the small businesses. Let me preempt, because I'm talking about employment. Our topic today is actually related to employment. We'll be looking at Zambian labor laws. Why is Zambian labor laws important? We'll be looking at it from the context of you, the business person, being the employer. And we'll be defining a lot of things which are relevant to you as a small business, as a medium-sized business. Even big businesses will be able to benefit from this topic. So employment creation is the second objective. The third objective is having businesses that can be sustained beyond the lifespan of the mine, the sponsoring mine, because the mine always says that copper is a wasting asset. One day it will run out, maybe after 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, but one day to run out. And they don't want to have a ghost town in Solwezi once the mines are closed. So Kansanshi's desire is to see that when the mine closes, we are going to have businesses that will be able to continue sustaining the economy, and we should not notice a difference when the mines have pulled out. So the third objective is having businesses that will be sustained beyond the lifespan of the mine and beyond the lifespan of the entrepreneur themselves. fourth and last objective is to have businesses formalized, to register your business. When your business is formalized, it positions you to be known. You will be known not only by fellow small businesses, you will be known by the government, you will be known by the corporate world, because as you market your services and your goods, they would like to relate to a legal entity that they can deal with. And therefore, your chances of growing your business will be on the increase. They will increase because you are formalized and you are able to apply for tenders. For you small businesses, we are now in a dispensation of, we are about to go into January when the government, the budget of the new government is going to be released. And there is a significant package for small businesses like yourselves. 25.7 million kwacha will be allocated to CDF regularly. Therefore, you can position yourselves. You can apply. And we from the Chamber of Commerce will continue to work hand in hand with the government, work hand in hand with the local municipalities to see to it that they make conditions accessible and easier for the small businesses, yourselves, so that the projects that you'll be given will be projects that are empowering, not projects that are impossible. So that is the purpose for that. So formalize as women groups, because there will be women empowerment funds within that 25.7 million. There will be youth empowerment funds. There will be enterprise development funds within that. There will be training funds. So let's position ourselves as small business people. So those were the 4 training objectives. Our lesson today, as I said, is Zambian labor laws. And when we have 30 minutes to go, we are going to open the phone lines and we'll give you a number where you can send us a missed call. We will phone you, you ask a question, ask questions which are related to today's topic. So please tell your neighbors, tell your associates that the Business Development Training Program has started. Get your pens, get your notebooks, and begin to write down that which you will learn during this training program. I can see my colleague, Mr. Alex Sinjiginya, he has sent a message. He says, I'm following. Welcome and good morning, my brother. And I hope that you are going to learn something of significance in today's training program. Please stay tuned. Let us now look at Zambian labor laws. Our outline of presentation will be as follows. We are going to define labor and employment law. We're going to look at the Constitution and labor interrelatedness. Then we shall look at the Employment Act, followed by minimum wages and conditions of Employment Act. We'll look at the basic conditions of service provided by law. Look at causes of industrial and labor disputes. And lastly, we shall look at dispute resolution. Okay. Now, let us define labor. What is labor law? Or what is employment law? First of all, the word labor is talking about employment. So when we talk about labor, we are talking about, human resource providing labor. Okay, skilled labor, unskilled labor. And there are laws which govern the aspect of employing workers. So that's why it's called labor law or employment law. So what is it? It is a branch of law that regulates the formation and the enforcement of contracts of employment. So there is a law which deals with the regulation of how we form contracts of employment or how we form agreements of employment. There is a law which governs how you form that, what will be the content, what will be the format. This is the foundation of this training. Let us pay very much attention, because once we understand the foundation, it will be easy for us now to understand the rest of the content. So this law governs, it governs the relationship between employer and employee. The employer and the employee have a certain relationship. That relationship is a working relationship. And that working relationship has to be governed. It has to be governed. And that is why we have this labor law or employment law to show how to govern the relationship between employer and employee. So this area of law is connected with defining rights and duties of employers and employees. An employee has rights, certain rights. An employer also has certain rights. An employee has certain conditions of work. So there are aspects of guidance in this law, of conditions of work, of safety in the workplace, and the position of trade unions and their members. Okay. So this is the definition of the labor law. Labor laws are intended to maintain good relationships between employers and employees. Okay? Between employers and employees. The law itself is meant to govern that relationship. Why? Because employers and employees are not supposed to be at loggerheads. Because if they are at loggerheads, then they cannot advance. The employer cannot advance. The employee cannot advance. They are partners. So legally, employment contract is a contract of service, okay? And we'll be differentiating, we'll be able to explain the types of contracts. So there's what is called a contract of service, which means services offered by an employee which are continuous in nature. And they are for a specified or fixed determinable period of time. Okay, so legally, we have contracts of service, which are for a fixed period of time or a predetermined period of time. So for instance, an employer and employee can have a contract of service, which is for a period of 12 months, okay, depending on the kind of work that is involved. However, there are other contracts under which a legal person works for another without being an employee of the employer. There are also those arrangements where someone is not an employee, they are not employed, they are not registered with that company as an employee, they are not on their NAPSA records, they are not on their workers' compensation records, but they have a certain working relationship, okay? So, such contracts are different. from the contract of employment. So when we say contract of employment, we are talking about those workers that have been employed by a particular employer or institution. Okay? So at law, they are known as contract for services. Okay? So those that are not employees per se, but they have a working relationship, they have contracts for services, and they are temporal in nature, whereby after the assignment is completed, the relationship ends. I'm sure all of us who are listening are employers of some sort. You may be a small scale farmer and you can engage people to come and help you with a project, and when that ends, the relationship ends there. Okay, so that is actually the definition of Zambian labor laws. Let's follow each other because that is very foundational. Okay, now let's go to the next segment, which is statutes which govern labor laws.
Thank you so much. Um, we are now looking at the statutes, which are the laws actually that govern labor laws. What are these statutes that govern labor laws? These labor laws are not coming from without. They come from these statutes that we are going to look at today. The first one, we are looking at the Constitution. So labor laws actually come from the Constitution. They are there. Constitution is the highest law in the land, to which all other laws follow hence. Any law or practice which is in conflict with the Constitution is invalid. The Constitution is the basis upon which all institutions, powers, laws, and the structures of government get their mandate. The provisions of the Constitution are binding on every individual and institution. So simply here, we are saying the labor laws are actually governed by the Constitution. They come from the Constitution. Okay? The next one are the Bill of Rights. We have heard actually severally people talking about Bill of Rights. The objective of the Bill of Rights is to preserve the dignity of the individual by ensuring social justice so that all human beings realize their potential. The Bill of Rights protects individuals in employment and in business. And these are, so now we are looking at the protections now which these Bill of Rights offer to the employees. So an employee is protected actually from forced labor. That is protection number one. You have protection from forced labor. This protects the individual from performing any piece of work against his or her will. Or is it forced labor? Therefore, you cannot force anybody to do a work against his wish. So, when you give somebody a piece of work to do, there must be an agreement. This other person who is your employee must agree with you that he is interested and is going to take up that particular job. The second one, protection from deprivation of property. No one has the right to take something that belongs to you without your permission. This ensures that no person takes away from a person any property or interests, or is it rights accrued legally. For example, an employer cannot take away a worker's wage or an allowance which has accrued to an individual by reason of their performance of work. So you as an employer, you have no right actually to not to give this employer who has worked for this wage. You have no right not to give him. So you are supposed to give him because you agreed in the first place that when you do this work, I am going to give you such an amount of money. This Bill of Rights also protects, there is protection of freedom of conscience, freedom of conscience. An employee shall not be discriminated against on the basis of their religion or beliefs. We have so many religions around. We have people who believe in certain things. Now, you as an employer, you have no right to discriminate these who believe on something else that you don't believe in. The fourth right is protection of freedom of expression. An employee and an employer shall not be prevented by any other person from his or her rights to hold an opinion or to receive ideas and information. So you are protected. You are free. As an employer, you are free as an employee to receive ideas, to have your own opinions. No one should prevent you from having your own opinion. The fifth right, protection of freedom of assembly and association. Workers and employers have the right to establish or join organizations. We have such organizations like trade unions. We have associations like business associations. These organizations, the employers and employees have the right, so no one should prevent them or make them not join these associations. They are free to associate with other people. They are free to join these trade unions because, after all, they protect their interests. Okay? So you are free. The other one is protection of young persons from, let me go back. The protection from discrimination. There should be no discrimination. An employee shall not be treated in a different way or in a discriminatory manner on the basis of their race, of how they look, their tribe, or is it their sex, or their place of origin, marital status, or is it political opinions. So no one should discriminate the other. An employee is free to be what he is, and no one should discriminate against that. There is protection of young persons now from exploitation. Employers shall not employ or engage a person who is 15 years or below. 15 years and below. These are looked at as minors, so you do not employ such young people, because after all they are still going to schools. You should not employ them. Of course, we can give them work at home as they are, growing up. You teach them how to till the land, you can do that. But to employ them as workers, the law does not allow. If you are found, you may be made to answer. Protection from property being taken away. I'm sure this one should be a repetition. We talked about this. We said no one has the right to take away anything, any property, any wage, any allowance, anything that you have worked for. Anything that belongs to you, that you have worked for, you legally own that property. No one has the right to take it away from you. I'm sure we have looked at the Bill of Rights. We have looked at the Constitution. These two, as the statutes actually, which govern the Zambian labor laws. So Zambian labor laws are based or are governed by these two. Okay? So meaning, if you go against this, you abrogate this, you will find yourselves in court. So we can now proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much, listeners, dear learners. I'm sure we have been following. The aspect of the Bill of Rights is very, very important. As we had given our earlier definition, we said that the labor laws are meant to foster a good relationship between employer and employee. So when you look at all the points that have been given under the Bill of Rights, these are meant to foster that relationship. And you may be saying, well, I'm just a small business. Are they applicable to me? The answer is yes. It is applicable to all of us. Whether you are an individual employing somebody, you need to observe what is outlined in the Bill of Rights. You still need to protect, the workers so that, they are built and not exploited. Let's look at the Employment Act. There is, under the laws, the Act which is called Chapter 268 of the laws of Zambia. So it is a law. The Employment Act is actually a law. Now, what is the Employment Act? This is principal law that relates to the employment of persons. It is the principle, it is the foundational law that looks at the aspect of employment of people. So the law that talks about issues to do with employment is called the Employment Act. This Employment Act covers issues like contracts of service, and these contracts of service can be both oral and written. And we'll be able to talk about that a little bit later. But it covers the entire aspect of contracts. They can be written, they can be oral or verbal. it also provides the form that they take. In other words, this law is going to prescribe a format or the contents. It will give a guideline of how you can actually create these contracts. And it shows how such contracts can be enforced or can be made into effect. So it's a very comprehensive law. Okay, it's a very comprehensive law. So under this law, we want to define who an employer is, who an employee is, and who a casual employee or casual worker is. Let us begin by defining employer. And this is where you may be interested, because sometimes when we hear the word employer, we are only thinking about the big institutions like the government, like the mines, like the contractors, and all those established, well-established companies like Zambian and Shoprite. Those are employers. So an employer is any company, big and small. Big like Kansanshi, small like your small company. It can also be an individual person. That is what I was talking about. So I was saying, under the Bill of Rights, even you as an individual, you don't have a company registered, but you are doing some form of business. You are a farmer. You have a garden, and you have employed one person. You are an employer. It also talks about a group of persons who employ one or more people. Those are employers. So employers, for example, can be a club. A club can employ somebody. A cooperative can employ somebody. So cooperatives nowadays are formed as a business model. Gone are the days. And if you have a cooperative, I want to just give you a bit of guidance. You are in a cooperative, you have a cooperative, there are 30 members. You formed that cooperative for the purpose of getting fertilizer only. And then when you get fertilizer and you plant your maize, it goes to sleep and resurrects next year to get fertilizer. If you are such a cooperative, you need to change the business model and begin doing business. You begin raising funds as a cooperative. You begin employing people. That's how you create employment. So an employer, we have said, is a company, big or small. It can be a person. It can be a group of people like a cooperative, like a club, like a youth group. Okay. That is an employer. Let us now define an employee. Who is an employee? This is a person that works under an agreement or a contract of employment for a period of time that has been agreed with the employer. So in other words, we are saying that an employee works for an employer under certain agreed terms or conditions. And this agreement, once again, as we said, or this contract can be verbal or written. So you can have a verbal arrangement. Most of the small businesses do not have written contracts with workers. They have verbal contracts, and most of them work very well. When there is trustworthiness, when there is integrity, you can have a valid verbal contract and you don't even have a problem No need to even have legal issues coming in. Why? Because both of you are respecting that agreement. Let's now define a casual employee. Who is a casual worker? This is a worker that has been engaged by an employer for a period of not more than 6 months, and their pay is calculated on a daily basis. So they are casual workers. There are companies which employ casual workers. Okay, like maybe you have a construction job and you engage those that are going to be helpers, helping the builder. Okay, they are mixing the cement, and they are passing on the wheelbarrows and so forth. The workers, the helpers, those can be employed as casual workers for that period that is less than 6 months. I hope we are following, dear learners. We have, just looked at, the aspect of the Employment Act. Let us now look at the mandate of the Labor Department very quickly. The mandate of the Labor Department is to administer and to regulate and to develop the labor market so that they can promote and enhance employment creation, rights at work, and promote social dialogue. Now, we will not dwell so much into the responsibilities of the Labor Department, but we need to understand, because sometimes we need to consult them on labor matters. You want to employ, you can go to the Labor Department. It's not always that when we go to the Labor Department, then there's a problem. You can go to the Labor Department for guidance on how you want to transform your business and how you want to structure your workforce. So the Labor Department has that mandate to help you to administer and regulate and develop your labor. Okay, they develop the labor market so that they can promote and enhance employment creation. So in order to achieve the above stated mandate, the Labor Department carries out the following functions. As we said, number one, they administer and enforce labor laws, okay, to ensure that the standards that are required of employment are adhered to for the protection of workers and employers' rights. We said that workers have rights, employers have rights. It is wrong for a business to open a small-scale mine, for instance, and they subject their workers to very poor conditions of service. No protection, no PPE, nothing, and making the lives of the workers vulnerable. So the Labor Department will ensure that when they get wind of such an employer, they pounce on them to make sure that they put things right. That is the work of the Labor Department. The second function is to resolve industrial disputes between employers and employees. If there is a difference between employers and employees, there is a way out, because the Labor Department has the law and they can interpret it, and they can help both the employer and the employee to bring them to a point of reconciliation. The other mandate is to promote social dialogue at the places of work. Workers, employees, and employers are supposed to operate like partners, and there's supposed to be dialogue. So any employer who is trying to take the company in a certain direction, they need to brainstorm with the workers because it is the workers who do the work. No matter how much the investment somebody has put in, even if you put in 1 million kwacha, you need workers to help you multiply it. So workers are important partners in any organization, and employers, I urge you to begin treating them as partners. Another mandate of the Labor Department is to carry out regular labor inspections at the workplaces. Regular inspections. And also to promote the employment of local job seekers. We call that Zambianization. There is a law which actually says Zambians should be employed, should be given preference, especially where the skills are found locally. That is how the government, through the Labor Department, wants to actually foster employment creation. Okay. So now, there are some key labor legislations which are administered by the Labor Department, and I'll mention them quickly. Then we can go to another aspect of our lesson. So some of the laws that are administered, or some of the legislations that are administered by the Labor Department, include the Employment Act, Cap number 268, which we have already talked about. There is also the Industrial and Labor Relations Act, which we have also described, Act Cap 269. We have the Employment of Young Persons and Children's Act, Cap 274. My colleague talked about this one, where children are protected from labor, from child labor. And then we also have a law on minimum wages and conditions of employment. It's an act, the Employment Act, Cap number 276. We are not going to go to dwell so much in detail, but we just wanted to let you know that there are pieces of legislation which give guidance on all these issues that relate to labor. Well, dear learners, I hope that we are following each other. Where we don't understand, let's write down the question. And when we have 30 minutes to go, we'll open the phone line so that you can send us the missed call and you can ask us that question. Now, let my colleague take us through the next segment of the training.
Thank you so much. I hope you are following us closely. Now, where you have a law, usually you would find maybe people breaking those laws. So now let's look at some of the common offenses. Common offenses in labor issues. The first one is willfully obstruct or hinder or delay a proper officer in the exercise of any of the powers conferred upon him by the provision of this act. Okay. Which are these officers that are we talking about? These are the labor officers. These people are supposed to inspect your places. They have the right actually to come into there, and usually they have their tags. They will show you that this is who they are. They will introduce themselves and show you their cards, so that you know that they are actually proper officers. They are officers who are mandated to inspect your premises. The second one, without reasonable cause, if you fail to comply with any lawful direction given by these same officers under the provision of this act, you will have committed an offense. So the labor officers will come visit you, then they will also tell you to do certain things. They will give you directions. Now, if you willfully refuse to carry out those directions, then you will have committed an offense. The third one is you fail to produce any book, account, books such as accounts, the register of your workers or the wage registers, or any other document which he is required to produce under the provision of this act. So these officers will visit you. When they visit you, they will ask for certain documents. They will want to see certain documents, like the wage book. They want to see how much you are paying them. They will want to see the contracts, if there are any written contracts, so that they know and they can assess and they will be able to advise where possible. So if you willfully fail to produce these books, they ask you, do you have any such? Then you don't have. You will be committing an offense. Then why are you employing these people? How are you employing them if you don't even have records for them? So the fourth one is concealing or attempt to conceal any employee or casual worker who is required to appear before or to be examined by any labor officer, or who otherwise prevents or attempts to prevent any such employee or casual employee from so appearing or being examined. Okay. These employees, these labor officers, would want to have a chat with those casual employees and other employees to find out how they are working. So if you attempt to hide these people by maybe asking them to move out of the workplace when the labor officer is there, that in itself is an offense, because this labor officer needs some information from the people who are affected. So now if you prevent them from doing such, then you are making their work very difficult. Okay, so these are the four common ones. These are the four common offenses that we as employers end up committing. So let us go to another segment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next segment is looking at oral contracts of service and the general conditions. So we say that oral contracts are verbal contracts. So all contracts of service, except those that are required by law to be in writing, may be made orally. So all contracts of service may be made orally. And any contract will be presumed to be an oral contract if there is a period within which wages are calculated. Okay, so oral contracts, as we said earlier, are such contracts where the calculation of those wages is made on the basis of the period, a certain period of time, maybe a daily rate, weekly, and so forth. So when oral contract is for a month, for instance, we shall presume that the employer and the employee have entered into a new contract for the same period of time. By that, what we mean is you have employed, an employee, you have employed a person for a period of 1 month, you have a verbal contract with them, and you have given them specified duties. They know what they need to do. They know how much they will get for that 1 month period. In the event that you would like them to extend for another month, then we can presume that the same conditions that you gave them for 1 month will be the same conditions that will be applicable in the next month, unless otherwise you have to enter another agreement. But if it is for the same type of work, then we can carry forward the same oral contract into the next assignment for the next 1 month. Okay. Now, how can such a contract come to an end? It can either be by notice to terminate, okay, which is given by either party. So in other words, if you have given an employee a 1 month contract, and that employee wants to terminate that contract at 3 weeks, they can give notice. They can give you notice that they will not be continuing. So either party can actually give a notice to terminate. The employer, when circumstances are not favorable, they can also give a notice to say, well, because of these challenges, we will not be continuing with this assignment. And then you can make calculations based on the daily rate, and you can pay them what is owed to them according to the number of days that they have worked. Okay? So that payment will be done with regard to the notice, with regard to the period that they have worked. Okay? Then there is what they call a summarily terminated for lawful cause. There may be some situations where an employee has done something that is really against the law. There is what is called summary termination. Okay, they can be actually written to say their work has come to an end. Okay, so an oral contract will be presumed to have been terminated if the contract is made to the effect that it can be terminated without notice. Now, what do we mean by that? When there is an agreement, an oral agreement, to say you are going to work for 1 month, this is the work that you're going to be doing. At the end of 1 month, we are going to pay you so much, and that will be the end of the contract. When there is such an agreement, and that worker works for that 1 month, and they are paid their wages, it simply means that the contract has automatically terminated itself. There is no need for a notice because there was an agreement. That is one way in which an oral contract comes to an end. You agree to work for a certain time, okay? The employer and the employee agree, and when that time comes, the work has been done, you are satisfied, that contract terminates automatically. And there will be no need for you to re-engage them if there is no other work to do. Like, for example, you have a builder. You have given them work to build you a poultry house. And that poultry house will take a month. So they put the slab, they raise the walls, they put the roof, they plaster, they demarcate, and they hand over. You pay them, they go, and you go your way. So that is one way in which such a contract can be terminated, or it can terminate itself. Secondly, an oral contract can terminate if it is for a fixed duration and the period has come to an end, similar to the first one. When that time comes, 3 months, and you had agreed to say it is going to be a 3 months assignment, when that period comes to an end, the contract officially automatically terminates. Another way, the third way in which an oral contract can terminate is if it is a daily contract and wages are paid daily. Now, this is very common, especially in the farms. Fortune World is a farming enterprise as well. And one of the biggest challenges of being a farmer, I'm sure even my colleague Mr. Mtes will agree, is labor.
Yes.
Finding farm labor force is the most difficult, activity as a farmer. Because although the unemployment rate in Zambia is very high, workers to work on the farm are usually just not available.
Yeah.
They just don't consider farming or working at the farm as a form of employment. We need to change a lot of mindsets because farms can provide very stable jobs. Okay. So, but we'll talk about that in detail another day. But we are saying in farm areas, sometimes it is more attractive to get piece workers to come and do a certain piece of work and they are paid immediately. So you pay them after they have done a quarter of a quarter lima in terms of land preparation. They go home. They go and buy their relish. They buy their cooking oil. And some of them even want to go and buy alcohol. They go and drink. If they feel that they need more money, they'll come back tomorrow. They work, you pay them that 30 kwacha as an example. They go again, they do what they want. So when you have such an arrangement, that is called a daily contract and wages are paid. And when they are paid wages, the contract has come to an end. When they come tomorrow, it means that they have entered into a fresh contract. That is very, very important. So, dear learners, I hope that we are following each other. Any burning questions, please write them down. And we'll be opening our phone lines quite soon so that you can send us a missed call and we'll endeavor to answer those questions. Let's go into the next segment and my colleague will take us through.
Thank you. Termination of an oral contract by notice. How do you terminate an oral contract? By notice. Number one, an oral contract of service may be terminated by either the employee or the employer if they give notice of their intention to terminate the contract. So meaning you are in a contract, employer and employee, but if you feel you want to terminate that, you are at liberty. But first you have to give a notice. If period of notice has not been agreed upon, the law states that it shall be 24 hours for a contract of less than a week, 14 days for a daily contract in which wages are not paid daily, but at intervals no longer than a month, 30 days where the contract is for a week or more. So once a notice expires, all wages and payment benefits due to the employee shall be paid to him or her. So what we are saying here is that there is a guideline that has been given on how to give this notice. So by law, the law states that it shall be 24 hours for a contract less than a week. So if you are in a contract which is less than a week, you can give a 24-hour notice. 14 days for a daily contract in which wages are not paid daily but at intervals. This is simply to prepare the employer to do what? To prepare the benefits for the so-called employee. Okay? So now we are saying once this notice is expired, then these benefits must immediately be paid to the employee. Okay? So now let's look at the written contract of service. Generally, contracts must be written if 1. Employment is for 6 months or for more than 6 months. Such works cannot be completed within 6 months. For example, if you have given somebody some works and those works cannot be completed within 6 months, then such a contract should be written. It should be written. You would give a house, maybe you have given somebody to build a house, and that house is a duplex which will take more than 6 months to build. You need to give such an employee a written contract. Contracts which are made in Zambia, which is to be performed wholly or outside Zambia, they are contracts. Maybe say a business person has some works to do in the neighboring country. Then you are employing someone from here. Such contracts must always be written so that the employee has a copy of that written contract. Then you also, as an employer, you have your written contract to remind you of what you have agreed between you and your employee. Employers that do not provide contracts to their employees risk losing the case in an event of labor disputes. So if you don't give your employees written contracts, how do you prove that they were not supposed to get certain benefits? So you find when this gets to the labor department, who are supposed to, help you with these disputes, or if you happen to go to court, you are likely to lose the case as an employer because you did not provide a contract. So in this case, your employee's word will be taken as, as it is, because there is no proof actually otherwise. So this is our written contract. We have said your written contract is given when you are engaging somebody for 6 months and more, and even when you have someone who is working in a neighboring country. Thank you. We can go ahead to
Wonderful.
the next segment.
Wonderful. Let's now look at payment of salaries or wages. Salaries and wages. A salary or a wage shall be paid at regular intervals as per contract, either from month to month or fortnight to fortnight or week to week. I know that it is not very common in Zambia to pay fortnightly, that is every 2 weeks. But in some other countries, that is a very common practice. Some people are paid every week. I remember one time working in South Africa as a temporal employee, and we were being paid every week. Okay, others are paid every fortnight. Others are paid every month. But the most common way is to pay salaries and wages on a monthly basis, because that actually helps in your planning. It will help the employer to plan. It will give them time to raise the funds and pay. And it will also help the employee to budget and execute for the month. So our culture in Zambia usually is that we pay, or we are paid every month. For the more organized, well-established institutions, such as the mines and other big institutions, they even have a specific date where salaries are paid. So workers will know that on this particular date, monies will be credited to their bank accounts. Okay, so salaries, wages paid at regular intervals. Of course, there is a difference between a salary and a wage. Usually, salaries are associated with permanent employees, and wages are associated with temporal employees. It can be piece workers and so on and so forth. That's the only difference. Then there is the aspect of payment of an employee, which can also be based on the amount of work done. So your agreement can be structured in such a way that when you do a certain lot of work, you are paid so much. So it is measured based on how much work you do. For instance, at our farm, and we have right now we have works going on. We've been doing works throughout the year. Excuse me. And right now we still have works going on. We are still preparing land in some other segments in readiness to plant certain crops. And there is a rate that we agree to say, if you do 1 lima, it is so much. And let's say we want to do 3 hectares. Then you calculate how many limas are in 1 hectare. That is 4 limas. So the piece workers would actually choose whether they just want to end on 1 lima, or they will do the whole 4 limas, and so on and so forth. So that is payment based on the amount of work done. But of course, there has to be a rate that will help you to calculate that. And then there's the aspect of a payment agreement that can be in cash or in kind. Okay. It is very common again in the farm areas, where some workers will just tell you to say, no, for us, we want you to bring us relish.
Yes, carpenter.
We want you to bring us carpenter, chisense, okay, or cooking oil, and we're going to do some work for you. So you can agree to say, okay, for 1 kadish of kisense, you're going to do so much work for me. All those are modes of payment that you can actually agree. Then let's now look at the aspect of the minimum wages and conditions of employment quickly. Then we open the lines. There is a piece of legislation which is called the Minimum Wages and Conditions of Employment Act. This piece of legislation is responsible for setting the minimum conditions of employment for protected workers. Okay? So, there are workers who are protected by law. Okay? And this piece of legislation is going to set or to prescribe certain minimum conditions, such as the amount of money that they should be paid for a particular kind of position or a particular kind of work, the kind of conditions, the hours of work, and so forth. So this act will further give powers to the Minister of Labor and Social Security to adjust, to alter, and so on and so forth. Why? Because it is a statutory instrument. Okay. And currently, there is a statutory instrument or a piece of legislation in place, which is the Minimum Wages and Conditions of Employment. Okay. General Order. Minimum wages and conditions of employment for shop workers and for domestic workers, and so on and so forth. So there is a prescribed amount of money that you need to pay for your domestic work. Okay, you call them domestic workers. They can be working in the house or in the garden. There is a certain amount of money, minimum requirement, that you need to pay them. For shopkeepers, there is a certain amount that you need to pay them. And if you have specific questions on that, we can actually look at those statutory instruments and we can give you the specific figures. Okay. Our time is actually moving. We'll soon be opening the phone lines. But let us first of all look at the next segment, which is the basic conditions of service provided by the law.
Okay, thank you so much. Basic conditions of the service provided by law. These are the following conditions that are provided by law. First one is annual leave. A full-time employee who has worked over a period of 6 months shall be given leave at the rate of 2 days per month or 24 days per year. So every permanent employee is entitled to go on leave annually. And these days, his days will accrue actually. Every month, 2 days is put aside for his annual leave. Okay? Public holidays. When an employee works on a gazetted public holiday or a Sunday, he or she is entitled to overtime pay. Overtime pay at a double the normal rate. For example, where a Sunday does not form part of the working day. What's this now? Okay, this one. All right. Overtime, 48 hours for general workers and 46 hours for shop workers. Any work beyond these hours must be paid at 1.5 the hourly rate, which is 1.5 the hourly rate. Double pay for work done on paid holidays. I'm sure this one is straightforward. Then you have maternity leave. An eligible female, which means every female actually, who is working with you is entitled to 220 calendar days as maternity leave. such as for protected employees, whereas as others workers, it is 90 days. Okay. Every female whom you are working, we are talking of permanent workers here. So females are given 90 days, 3 months, when they are on maternity leave. That is their maternity leave. When they are due, to deliver, they will be given this 90 days. They will be pregnant, they will work on until when they feel they cannot work anymore. Then they will get their 90 days. These 90 days will be paid leave. It's maternity leave. And you as an employer will pay them for this whilst they are absent from work. Then you have also sick leave. Any employee who is certified and fit by the hospitals to carry out his or her duties is given sick leave. And this sick leave, depending on the severity of the disease or the sickness, it will be 90 days of full pay. This person will be out of work for 90 days whilst recuperating at home. 90 days full pay. You will pay them full pay. Then after the 90 days, if they are still unwell, they continue on sick leave, you will then give them another 90 days of half salary. Okay? 90 days, the first 90 days is full pay, then the next 90 days half salary. That is a condition which is given by law. Only after this 90 days half pay will, if the patient is still unwell, then you call for a medical board where now such a person may be discharged on medical grounds, depending on what the experts will see there. Then the other condition is housing allowance. Any employee is entitled to 30% of the basic salary as housing allowance. So you have 30% of the basic salary, which should be given to you as housing allowance. Okay, I think we move to the next section.
Okay, so thank you very much. Dear learners, now you may be wondering, you may be telling yourself to say, maybe these basic conditions of service that are provided by law do not apply to you at the moment, because maybe you are a very small business and you don't have the capacity to employ full-time employees who are going to get annual leave, public holidays, and all those. This information is still very important, because as you learn it, you will be able to apply this knowledge as your business grows. Remember that your business is like a seed. You start small and eventually it will become big, and you are going to need this information. So there is no information which is irrelevant. And when you receive certain information, just count yourself as somebody who is fortunate, because you are going to use that information one day. We are opening the phone lines now, and the number to dial is 0978 383 141. 0978 383 141. Give us a missed call. We are going to call you back. You can ask your question, and we are going to endeavor to answer that question. So let the phones start ringing. Let the calls start coming in. 0978 383-141. The importance of us receiving calls on air is that when you ask a question on air, it is going to benefit other people that may be in a similar situation. So let us get to our phones and ask those questions. So as we are waiting for our callers to call in, let us look at some of the causes of industrial disputes or labor disputes. Okay. There are some general causes of labor disputes which result in bad employer-employee relations. I'll give you one, and then I'm going to read out a question that has come via text. Okay, so one of the reasons why we have conflict between employers and employees is the close-mindedness of employers and employees. This is whereby one is thinking of extracting maximum work with minimum remuneration. So for us, the employers, sometimes we have a tendency of wanting to overwork the workers for a very little wage. That is a source of conflict. The truth is also on the opposite side, where the other one is thinking of avoiding work, but they want to get an enhanced pay or wages. So sometimes workers also don't want to put in much in terms of work, but they want to get the full benefits. That brings about conflict between employers and employees. There is a question from Madam Elise Malabo from Wisdom Compound. She says, I worked for a certain private school without signing a contract with the employer. The employer refused to sign a contract because I know you, okay? Because that employer knew her, okay? When the time comes to get paid, there were misunderstandings. Okay, is it right to take that employer to the labor office? Okay, so now this one is an unfortunate situation, Madam Ellis. First of all, a school is a well-established institution. And school owners, private school owners, are learned people. They understand labor laws, and they are not supposed to behave in such a way that, they are taking advantage of workers' free labor. What was supposed to happen is that for a job like a teacher, you are supposed to have a written contract because your terms and conditions are supposed to be stipulated in white and black because teaching is a very sensitive job. Teachers are the ones who build, the workforce, the labor force in the society. So they are supposed to be guided very well with a contract, and they are supposed to be remunerated. Well, as to whether you can take the issue to the labor office, if you have sat down with them and you have refused, you have failed to come to an amicable agreement, then the labor office is able to help you resolve that dispute, Madam Ellis. I think that is the comment that I can give you. The number to dial is 0978 383 141, and I can see there is a caller. Somebody is calling. Let me phone them back, and then we can get their question.
Hello?
Good morning. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Good morning, sir. This is Given from Wisdom.
Morning, Mr. Given. How are you?
Thank you. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Your question, please.
Thank you. My question is regarding on labor law.
Yes,
Content office, I mean, yeah, labor office.
yes.
So the question is, if the employer fails to pay a wage to a worker, then the worker he wants to go and report the matter to the labor office, and then the employer says that no, if you go there, I will dismiss you. I will dismiss you from the wage. Then if he goes there again, the employee to the labor office, and then he reports the matter. Then do the labor officers do they charge the employee, or they say just take the worker again to the same way?
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a very good question. We are going to endeavor to answer that, sir. So, Given has brought up a very important question. You are an employee and your employer fails to pay you your wages or your salary, and then you want to go and report to the labor office. Then the employer threatens you with dismissal. Does the labor office charge the employee or the employer? Very interesting question and very common problem. It's a very common problem. And I think as we answer this question, it will help many other people. Maybe my colleague can answer it, and I'll also add if necessary.
Thank you. Yeah, it is indeed a very important question, Mr. Given. You had a contract with your employer. Then now this employer fails to pay you, which means he has actually breached the contract. When you try to talk to him and tell him that you may take him to the labor office, he threatens you. Mr. Given, you have the right to go to labor office because he has not paid you. You have tried to discuss with him. It seems he's stuck. He can't pay you. Go to labor office. Then you explain this to the labor office. You tell them that you actually were in this contract. Now, your question was, what are these labor officers going to do? One, they are going to compel this employer to pay you. They will ask him to pay you your money. And they will even tell him not to fire you. If he fires you, you remember when we were looking at those common offenses. When he fails to comply with what the labor officers have told him, then that's an offense. He will have the labor officers now to deal with him. Usually, they would easily take him to court. Maybe my colleague can add.
Thank you so much. I think you have been guided very well. We were looking at causes of industrial or labor disputes. And my second point actually tackles that question somehow. Poor human relations and lack of skill on the part of management personnel. When management do not have certain skills, then they will sit on the rights of their workers, such as not wanting to pay them. It's difficult, if it's different if that company is going through certain challenges and you explain because you've got good relationships. And the workers are going to know that you are genuine because they know you. But when they know that when you get paid, you're a contractor, maybe in the mine, you get paid and you are full of fun, that's when you book tickets, you fly out of town to go and play, and then you come back, you're not paying them, then it means that you have poor human relations as an employer. Employers, let us not infringe on rights of our employees. Let us pay them what is due to them. Even the Bible tells us we need to pay workers when they work. That's what the Bible says. Give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, the worker what belongs to him, to government what belongs to government, pay taxes. That is a simple principle. There is a caller. Let me call them back. I hope they are calling with regard to the training program. Good morning, your name and where you're calling us from. Mr. Boaz Chibuye. Chibwe. Good morning, Mr. Boaz. Please give us your question, sir.
On this common offenses, there is the unlawful failure to produce documents and the other one. What are the...
We lost the caller. Let me try to call him. He's asking a question on some of the common offenses. He was just trying to explain, and then the line cut. Mr. Chiwe, sorry, the line cut. Please go ahead with your question. Hello, Mr. Chiwe. His line is... Yes, Mr. Chiwe, we can hear you now.
Okay. I'm talking on common offenses.
Yes.
Obstructing or delay, failing to comply, failing to produce documents and conceding. On these charges, the labor, what do they charge if you are found wanting on these cases?
Okay. Very good question. A very good question. We are going to attempt to answer that one. Thank you so much. When you go against these offenses, Mr. Mutes, what is the charge that will come from the labor office?
When you fail to, or maybe when you fail to comply with what the labor have actually given you, there are two things that they will do. The first one is to sit with you and try to counsel you. They will sit with you and try to counsel you, tell you that what you have done is an offense. If that fails, they will take you to court. You go and answer. Actually, they are court officers themselves. They will take you to court. And the court is the one which will guide on what should be done. Because sometimes you do even lose your license. You see? That's how I can answer that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So you have been guided on what they would actually do. There is a question. Once again, there's a message from Given Chiyuka. He says, question number 1, what is the minimum wage for salesperson who is working for a company? Salesperson. Number 2, is it right to work for a company which you have not signed a contract with? or what are the disadvantages of this situation. Okay, I'll give the first question to my colleague. I'll attempt to answer the same question, the second question.
Mm. We may not have the actual amount now, but later on, if you need that, we will be able to communicate that amount, because we have to look at it. It is tabulated actually, and we don't have the copy here with us. So we don't want to give you wrong figures. Okay? So if you need Mr. Chivwe, just, we have gotten your number. We'll be able to send you this document. Thank you.
Indeed. So we'll give you the accurate figure,
Mm.
but it was somewhere around 2,000.
Yeah.
Somewhere there. About 2,000, 2 going up, and they revise these things.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at the revised rates, and we can give you that information.
Sure.
Secondly, is it right to work for a company without a written contract? Again, it depends on the kind of work that you are doing. As a permanent employee, you are supposed to have a contract, a written contract. If it is a part-time, you are going to have an oral contract. So a written contract is safe for an employee, a permanent employee, because you are going to use that as a basis, for your relationship with your employer. What is the disadvantage of a permanent employee not having a written contract? It is going to disadvantage you because you will not really know what is stipulated. The employer can turn around and say, we have not employed you. We have not signed anyway. If that employer is actually not very honest, they can turn around and they can refuse in the court of law. So it will be your word against their word in that court of law. Okay. Then, secondly, the disadvantage is also to the employer. If you don't have a written contract with your permanent employee and you enter into a dispute, chances are that the courts of law or the labor office are going to charge you for neglecting that important aspect. So I hope we have answered that, Mr. Chiwe. The lines are still open, even as we are, almost going towards the end. But we were looking at, something quite important, and we are going to actually endeavor to continue. Okay? So the phone lines are still open. You can call us on 0978 383 141. We were looking at causes of industrial or labor disputes. The first one was close mindedness, where the employee is just focused on personal benefit, and so is the employer. That causes conflict. Secondly, we said poor human relations on the part of management. The third one is nepotism. Nepotism is actually the practice of favoring relatives. You are favoring relatives. I can see there is a caller, and I'll be calling them back so that we can hear their question. But nepotism is the aspect where you have relatives, you favor them, and in your work environment there is an equal workload. Hello,
Hello?
caller.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you. Your question, your name, please.
Yeah, the same director from Wisdom, sir.
Okay, given, please, your question.
Sure, the question is, I always find a problem or confused. Like I've been doing a contract with some company. Example, the contract form will be signed the hour. And then the hour, example, they will say you wait for seven quarter betting where the what the the hour. Then he wait late for 12 or 13 days. Then me myself make I'll calculate make in total I'll find maybe 1 5 or 2 penny. With them I'll find maybe 7 or 800. Then when you claim for that man, I know my money is supposed to be like this. They will say no because of this, and they what they start supporting themselves. So in that way, we normally start the problem. So what can be advice or help from you if I come across the same problem?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll attempt to answer that one. Thank you so much. Maybe you can go for that question, and then I'll see if I can add.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Given.
Given. You have a contract, and they are telling you that you'll be working for 7 kwacha 20 ngwe per hour. Now you have worked. When you calculate yourself, you find you are supposed to get maybe 2,000 kwacha. But them are saying we are giving you 800 kwacha. There is a problem there. The first problem is only the calculation itself. It should show how many days you have worked, how many of these hours that you have worked. Then they calculate, they multiply now with the whatever and to find the total. If they want to give excuses or explanations as to why this has dropped to 800, they should be able to show it, whether they have gotten some money, taken it somewhere, like maybe you have paid, they have paid for your NAPSA or whatever. It should show. If it does not show, you have the right actually to claim for this money. Claim for it, because your contract says you are going to work for 7 kwacha 20 ngwe and you have worked so many hours, and these hours add to 2,000 kwacha. You are supposed to get this 2,000 kwacha, unless if maybe you worked less hours. If you worked less hours, yes, they will reduce, and they will be able to explain to you why your money has not added up to 2,000. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In addition to that, employers are supposed to have integrity,
Of course.
because 7 kwasha 20 ngwe times 13 days. If that is what you have worked, you agree that you have worked for 13 days, and your employer also agrees that you have worked for 13 days. Mathematics is mathematics. A formula is a formula. The answer should be what you are paid. But if you know that your employer has the habit of stealing from you, my colleague here was teaching us, there are certain rights or certain offenses. You don't have the right as an employer to take away what belongs to the employee.
Yes.
That is criminal, that is theft. So in such a case, when you know that you've got a difficult employer and you have a contract in place, that is an issue where the labor office can come in and help.
Yes.
You can go to the labor office and you can complain, and they will come through and they will actually assist you. It's very unfortunate that we have very, very selfish employers out there. If we know that we have no capacity to employ people, let's not employ. Let's work ourselves until we grow our capacity. So let's not use people, because your business will not grow. Integrity is one of the assets of a business, and we are supposed to have integrity. We hope we have answered you, my friend. Given, let me take in one or two last calls. I can see there's somebody trying to call us. Hello, caller, your name? Mr. Boaz, so welcome back. Please, your question.
There are some companies with status of terminating workers after they have worked for 6 months, and then employ others. Here, some workers become permanent workers. What are the labor department doing to this data? It's common.
Okay,
Yes.
that is a very serious issue. We will attempt to answer that one as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Chiwe has brought up a very important question. This is very common.
It is.
Sometimes
It is actually.
you employ casual workers. You know that you have work that will take 5 years. You have a big project. And you employ casual workers for 6 months. They go.
Yeah, they move.
You bring others so that you don't employ them permanently, so that you are not going to incur other costs such as NAPSAs and all those things.
Sure.
What is the Labor Department doing about it? Well, we cannot answer for the Labor Department. I'm sure they have dealt with such cases when they are reported. But our duty as citizens is when we have seen such a trend, let us make the Labor Office aware, and they will do their own investigations. But what we can say is that this is a wrong practice because it is not being done in the spirit of creating employment. There is a difference between a casual work and a permanent job. If you have been given an opportunity as a company to employ workers and you have, a big contract, provide empowerment to others through permanent employment. That is how we share resources. Resources are meant to be shared. How do you enjoy millions alone and you want to pay peanuts? Where do you even take the money? It doesn't even make sense. We are supposed to be conduits, conveyor belts for empowerment. This topic is very, very important, and these questions that they have asked today, Mr. Mtesi, are very, very,
very important,
very searching
sure,
questions.
Sure. I'm sure the labor officers are also listening. Yeah. So, Mr. Boaz Chibwe, if this employer has got this tendency, the simple way is for you actually to report this as the other caller, my colleague here has explained. We are not labor officers. We are not enforcers of this law. So let the labor officers hear about this, and they will be able to call this employer and talk to him.
Exactly. This leads me to the last point under causes of industrial or labor disputes, which is unjustifiable profit sharing.
Yes.
And not considering workers as co-sharers of the gains of the industry.
You see.
So you are busy making big profits and you are using laborers like slaves. You want them to work for you for 6 months, you pay them slave wages, and then you lay them off, you bring another group. That is unjustifiable profit sharing. If your company is growing, it is grown, we need to take an example of the big companies that we have. One example is our sponsor.
Yes.
They have permanent employees and everyone wants to work for them. Why? Because they have got good conditions. Let us learn from the big ones so that we can also start growing and become big. Good practices. In conclusion, dispute resolutions are done through the industrial relations. There is a industrial relations court. So industrial relations is concerned with the relationships between management and workers and the role of regulatory mechanism in resolving any industrial dispute. So all these questions you have brought, they hinge on industrial dispute. The labor law, it can actually escalate an issue to the industrial relations court, and the court is going to determine certain big cases where they can rule in a fair manner. So we have got laws for that. Section 64 of the Employment Act, okay, which will look at aspects of whenever an employer or employee neglects or refuses to comply with the terms of any contract of service, or whenever any question or difference or dispute arises as to the rights or liabilities of any party to such contract or to any misconduct, neglect, or ill treatment. I think my colleague was answering to such a similar question. Then that section of the Employment Act will actually be applied, and they will take appropriate action in terms of bringing discipline to either the employer or the employee. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. The time is 10:15. I would like to thank all of you that took time to participate, to listen in, to call in. Those following us by radio, thank you so much. Those who followed us via Facebook, thank you very, very much. I believe that we have had another good learning experience. This is the last training program for the year 2021. We will convene, we'll continue again in January. We want to thank the sponsor of the program once again, Kansanshi Mining PLC, for giving us this unwavering support and also for giving us clearance to actually conduct the 2022 training program. So we'll be conducting a recruitment exercise. And when we come in January, we are going to give you some of the adjusted terms in terms of how we can go about maybe even examining you. For those that have been saying we have not received certificates, there will be a certain system we will come up with. We'll be able to disclose it very soon so that we can assess you and you can qualify to get a certificate of accomplishment. So from us, we would like to say thank you so much also to our partners, Beats FM, for giving us airspace so that we can come and provide this knowledge to our learners. Thank you, dear learners. Until we meet again, wishing you happy festivities. Merry Christmas, a prosperous 2022. We are going to meet on the other side. Pleasant listening, and God bless. Thank you. Mwabuka vipi? Asante vingi. Twakwisa lufundiso lwa uno mwaka. Lwapwe.